I've been asked to introduce the next speaker, and this will be a very short introduction. Not because I want to get off stage, Amy, I promise. It is because I want to listen to the speaker. He is an amazing man. He has done amazing things in his life, and he shares them so well. He's a master storyteller. And to show the commitment that he has done, he's the national director of China, Taiwan, and Hong Kong. But the commitment that he has shown to other people and their success is that he has taken his family, his young family, to China, and he is now a resident of China, fully committed to their success. People he doesn't even know and communities he cannot even touch yet will make a difference to those people. It is an amazing commitment to the success of this organization and the people of China. I'd like to introduce Andrew Hall.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. As Andy was just saying, I have actually made a quite substantial move. I was brought up in a very small town in Sussex in the UK. And for the past 6 years, I've been suffering massive culture shock as I transitioned my family across to the other side of the world. And I thought I'd just share with you right at the start just what it's like when you are making that transition, if you haven't done that, to go to a different culture, a different language, a different volume of people. Take a look at that slide. What do you think that is? Do you think that's going to the football match? That is the queue at Guangzhou train station. What I found about getting trains in China sometimes is you don't so much get on the train you want, you get on the train everybody else is getting on. And you just kind of get fed on. I remember when we first went to China, we booked ourselves into a beautiful 5-star hotel, my wife and I, and there's a little kitchen in the corner of our hotel room. And we'd been there for about 2 weeks, and my wife said to me, she said, why don't you go down, find a store, come back with some food, and I'll cook something up. I thought, fantastic idea. So I went down, I looked for a supermarket. And I found a place that I thought would be absolutely perfect, and I walked in. And I had in mind I was going to get one of those little flat packs, you know, the kind of little things with a little bit of chicken, a bit of beef or something, just like you get at Albertson just up the road. Then when I walked in there, I realized it wasn't quite the way things were sold in China. I've got to tell you, when I got back to my hotel room, I was feeling quite relieved to be back in the security of the hotel room, and I decided I was going to reward myself with one of those foot massages that the Chinese are so famous for. So I went down to the 3rd floor where the health center was, and I was standing outside, and I would have gone in. I wanted to go in. I was going to go in, but I just couldn't be sure they were taking me seriously. I've got to tell you, I am delighted to have been asked to close out the first day of the conference. And I was thinking, what should I talk to you about on the first day of the conference? And I thought, if it's all right with you, I'd talk about success. In particular, what is it that leads ordinary people to come to lead extraordinary lives? This is Li Xiaohui. He's a beggar in the city of Zhoushan in China. When he was 1 year old, Li Xiaohui had an accident. It left him paralyzed from the waist down. A burden to his family. From the age of 10, he's been homeless on the streets. Now, begging in China is a tough business. It's a hand-to-mouth business. If you're successful on the day, you eat. If you're unsuccessful, you go without. Now, as you probably remember, in 2008, there was a major catastrophe in China, just outside the city of Chengdu, a massive earthquake. Overnight, 70,000 people were left dead, 400,000 were left injured, more than 1 million were left without a home. The response of the Chinese government was massive, decisive, and immediate. And as part of their response, what they did was they set up collection lines in every city and major town so that people could make their contribution. Li Xiaohui joined his local queue. But when he got to the front of the queue, the organizers looked at him and said, you're in the wrong queue, mate. This is not for takers. This is for givers. Li Xiaohui said, I haven't come to take. He said, I haven't eaten for 10 days. But I have been begging, and I'd like to give you what I've collected. The next day, Li Xiaohui went back to his life as a beggar, but the impact of what he did not end there. When people heard about this man who'd gone without food so that he could give to others, People who never would have given found themselves joining the queue. People who would have given just a little bit were shamed into giving quite a lot more. Li Xiaohui gave $15 that day, but the impact of what he did caused tens of thousands of others to give millions more. When I first heard that story, it got me wondering, what is it that drives individuals to step up and do the extraordinary while the rest of the world sits quietly in the pack? And the more I thought about it, the more I realized the answer lies in our conditioning. That stream of events and influences that hit us at our earliest age that made us who we are today and set in stone how we see our place in the world. Consider this. You're on a plane. You're flying over the Himalayas, but there's a problem with your plane. You're losing height. In a short while, emergency action is going to need to be taken in the cockpit, or you're going to have a crash. I'm going to give you a life choice. Who do you want at the controls of your plane? This is your choice. You can have the pilot. 30 years experience, seen it all, done it all, should be able to cope with any eventuality. Or you can have the co-pilot. 3 years qualified in all the latest techniques, should be able to cope with any eventuality. Your life depends on it. Which one would you like? Hands up if you want the co-pilot. Yeah, not too many. Okay, hands up who wants the pilot. Yeah, if you want. Hands up who thinks this is a trick question. Probably best not to answer it. Okay. Well, if you want to live, you want the co-pilot. But probably not for the reason that you're thinking, and this is why. There's been a dramatic reduction in air accidents in recent years. And the reason for that was a study that was done of every air accident where pilot error had been the cause. And what the investigators found was that in most cases, it was the pilot, the proper, fully qualified, fully experienced pilot, who was at the controls during these accidents. It was particularly surprising because co-pilots were quite good at near misses. They were quite good at near misses, but somehow their near misses never ended up as fatalities. What was going on? What was going on was conditioning. You see, when the co-pilot made a mistake, the pilot immediately stepped in. He stepped in, seized control of the plane, and guided it back to safety. But when the pilot made a mistake, so conditioned was the co-pilot to respect authority that he sat lamely by as disaster loomed. Look, if a fully trained, proud, fully qualified co-pilot can sit alongside watching a captain take the plane into the ground, it is clear that how we see our place in the world has a massive impact upon our performance. And what I've got to tell you is, it's not confined to pilots. You know, straight after this conference last year, the EDs of the UK went off on the retreat. And if you've been there with us, one of the things that would have surprised you, because a lot of stuff was shared at that retreat, and one of the things that would have surprised you was just how fragile we all were. So many people shared things about things that have held them back in the past and quite possibly were holding them back right here today and on into the future. And it's not confined to EDs either. When I got back from the retreat, one of my best directors, one of my best EDs, made a bit of a mistake. And the mistake he made was, he had a contentious email that came in, he wrote a contentious email and sent it out, he wanted to click reply, he accidentally clicked reply to all. You've probably done it yourself from time to time. What surprised me was his reaction. His reaction was, he wrote me a really nice email, and he said, Andrew said, as a tradesman, he said, I don't think I have the skills necessary for this job, I think it's best if I step down. What I'd like to do with the time I've got with you this afternoon is look at your life, my life, in a way that you've probably never looked at it before. In a hope that by doing so, we can put all of these things to one side so the road ahead may be clear. And at the end of that, what I'd like to do, if it's all right with you, is share with you my guide to success. The short road, pain-free. And I think it's the only road you'll ever want to take. You know, if you look at the most successful people in the world today, these people have gone way beyond role models for our children. These people are now icons. We've lifted them up on a pedestal so high that we feel comfortable that we could never do what they do. We reinforce that with the concept of talent. They've been granted a gift that's given so rarely and so special that It's only right that we don't move in their circles. It's important because it affects how we feel about our own life and our own place in the world, what we expect from it, and how high we reach. Michael Schumacher, the most successful motor racing driver in the history of the sport. Never did his talent shine so brightly as in the wet. He won his first race in 1988 at the Belgian Grand Prix. It rained. And driving an inferior car, Michael Schumacher just rode away from the rest of the field. Here was the most naturally born, gifted racing driver the world had ever seen. Or was he? Now, I don't know what you were doing when you were 4 years old, but Michael Schumacher's dad had built him a racing go-kart. Now, the Schumachers weren't rich, but so keen were they to have their son racing that Mrs. Schumacher took a job at a local racetrack. And when you're looking for a favor, when you want something for free, you get to play when nobody else wants to. Michael Schumacher did much of his practice in the rain. You know, if you look at any of our successful people today, what you more or less will find every time is that what running behind it is a unique opportunity which is met with passionate application. A unique opportunity met with passionate application. Look at our sports stars of today, and primarily you find the impetus has come from their parents. Think of Tiger Woods, you think of his father. Think of Andy Murray, you think of his mother. Think of the Williams sisters, you think of their father. For those, it's their parents. For others, though, it's pure circumstance. Take a look at this guy. This is Ben Underwood. Well, good shot. Hard to think when you watch this guy in the prime of his life there, he's made a discovery that will impact thousands of people. He's leading an extraordinary life. Let me show you how. Can I just ask everybody, would you just close your eyes for a second? Amazing how conscious you feel when you're in a big room and you've got your eyes shut. Close your eyes for a second. Now, can I just ask you to imagine, with your eyes shut, that you were transported here onto the stage with me? And I ask you to imagine that standing on the stage here with your eyes closed, if I challenged you to step off the stage and find your way to the back and find your way across to the reception, could you do it? Do you think you'd get to the edge of the stage and fall off? Would you bump into the tables on the way? I think you probably would. Open your eyes. See, Ben Underwood, he's got his eyes closed all the time. He's completely blind. But that doesn't mean he can't see it. He's not aware of his surroundings. What Ben does when he walks is he clicks. He gives off a click. And that click, the sound bounces off all the items around him, and Ben builds up an awareness of where he is and of what's around him. It allows him to play basketball and know where the hoop is. It allows him to ride his bike. It allows him to get around his house and around a stranger's house with no problem at all, no white stick, no dog. He can see, in a sense, though he's blind. Ben's living an extraordinary life, and it's because of circumstance. But wherever we are tempted to assign supernatural talent to ordinary people, it's worth having a look behind it. Circumstance is usually not far away. Steve Jobs died recently, and it got me looking at some of the most famous people in the software world, the people that have shaped and changed our lives over the last 40 years. Bill Gates is there, Eric Schmidt, boss of Novell, and then later on boss of Google. Down the bottom there is Bill Joy, probably the greatest software programmer of all time. This is the guy who founded Sun Microsystems. If you, he rewrote the Java software, he wrote the Unix software. If you're running an Apple Mac, some of the software that Bill Joy wrote 40 years ago is still running your machine. Some of the code that he wrote 40 years ago is still running, driving your machine today. Now, when I looked at these people, I thought, what is it that's made those? Is there anything behind it? Are they just pure natural talented geniuses? And what I found was the first requirement, if you want to be one of these people, is you had to be born in 1955. You had to be born in 1955. If you weren't, or you weren't born pretty close to it, you'd missed it. Look, if you were born in 1953, what happened? By the time the software revolution started to hit, you got a mortgage, you got a family. You weren't going to bet all your chips on this latest revolution. If you started out in 1957, too late. These guys are already up and running. And they're away and clear. But okay, a lot of people were born in 1955, so they could still have been complete geniuses in their field, and they probably were. But let's look at the two Bills. Bill Gates. Bill Gates was lucky enough when he was a child to live in one of the few areas in the world that had a brand new multi-million-dollar direct access, direct typing computer. He was fortunate enough to have parents who could afford to club together with other parents to buy their kids some time on that computer. When their money ran out, the parents clubbed together again and they bought some more time. When that money ran out, they didn't need to buy any more time because now firms were queuing up to take advantage of these kids who knew how to take advantage of the new technology. Bill Joy had perhaps the most spectacular rise. He was lucky enough to go to Michigan University in 1971. Michigan University was one of the very few in the world that had one of these multi-million-dollar direct access computers. But Bill was set to be a biologist. He didn't have much time for computers. He didn't have much time for computers because time on a computer cost money. And being a student, money was something Bill didn't really have. But Bill Joy's life changed one day in spring 1971 when his friend hacked into the computer and got the access code. From that day on, Bill Joy could be on the computer 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, and he pretty much was. By the time the opportunity to rewrite the Unix code came up, Bill Joy was just about the most experienced programmer in the world. Wherever you look, you find the same result. Success is about opportunity and passionate application. If you persist in thinking that talent is the overriding marker in success, then you need to hear from this man. This man is Laszlo Polgar. You might not have heard of him, but to me, he's one of the most significant people of the second half of the 20th century. Now, Polgar was born in the 1940s. He was brought up under the communists in Hungary. And by the time he was 30 years old, he was living in a tiny flat in the center of Budapest. But Polgar was a man burdened by a belief. And his belief was this. His belief was that genius isn't born, it's made. He believed that David Beckham, that Albert Einstein, these people weren't born that way, they were made that way by their environment and the opportunities that came their way. So convinced was he of his belief that he set out to prove it. He decided he would make his own child a genius. Now, if he was going to do that, the first thing he needed to do was he needed a measure. He needed something that was completely indisputable so that if you produced a genius, everybody would know. And he found his measure in the game of chess. He chose chess because chess was a game that everybody in the communist bloc played at that time. He chose chess because chess had a rating system. Every player in the world is graded against every other player in the world. If you are the top at chess, it is indisputable. Polgar had his system, he had his measuring stick. All he needed now was a child. In fact, all he needed now was a wife. But never mind, undeterred, what Polgar did was he put an advert in the local paper and he advertised for someone to help him with his project. And quite incredibly, he found someone. And together they had their first daughter, Susan. When Susan was a baby, Polgar used to put the pieces in her hand so she'd get used to the feel of them. He'd prop her up so she could watch her parents playing chess so that she too would want to play chess. Susan entered her first tournament. It was a tournament for under-10s. Now, you know how these things work. When you enter a tournament for under-10s, every player is 9 years old. Susan Polgar was 4. She played 10 games. She won 10 games. She was immediately hailed as the greatest natural talent the chess world had ever seen. By the age of 15, she was the world women's chess champion. She remains the only player, man or woman, to have won the Grand Slam of chess, the 3 greatest tournaments in the same year. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, That Polgar really got lucky there, didn't he? But if you are thinking that, I do need to tell you, he had a second daughter. This is Sophia Polgar. Sophia Polgar is best known for what came to be known as the Sack of Rome. Every year there's a major tournament in Italy where all the top players from all over the world descend on Rome for this huge tournament. Now, the way you win a major tournament in chess is you don't win every game. You draw, you draw, you draw, you draw. You nick one here, you pinch one there, and that's how you win the tournament. Sophia Polgar won 8 games on the trot. Now, everything is rated in chess, and that ranks in the top 5 performances in the history of the game. You know what you're thinking? Polgar got really lucky with those 2 daughters, didn't he? He had a third. Judith Polgar has dominated the ladies' game for the last 20 years. She's now rated as the best female player of all time. Listen, here's the point. If one man in a tiny flat in Budapest can produce the 3 greatest lady chess players of all time just because he decided to, imagine the potential that lay in every one of us in this room on the day we were born. You see, the truth is that life hasn't been very fair to you and me. And let me just show you how unfair it's been. Let me take you through the lottery of life. The lottery of life began on the day that you were born. Were you set to be the oldest, or were you going to be the youngest? Now, I've traveled the world, and what I've found on my travels, it pretty much doesn't matter where you go. The weight of hope, of expectation, the burden of expectation falls on the shoulders of the eldest. Under such pressure, eldest children are destined to succeed. They're driven to succeed. Our corporate boardrooms are dominated by eldest children. Our major professions, doctors, dentists, lawyers, are dominated and top-loaded by eldest children. For younger children, from the moment you pull on your first hand-me-down, you know that your place in the world and the family is slightly different. Successful younger children tend to be the mavericks, the chancers, the entrepreneurs. You look at our most famous entrepreneurs today, and you're looking at younger children. Donald Trump, younger child. Alan Sugar, younger child. The dragons in the den, 4 out of the 5, younger children. See, younger children know that if they play in the same park as their elder brothers and sisters, they're likely to come off second. Poor old Ralph Schumacher. He was always going to be second. That cart was built for Michael. You know, the excitement in any race is out in the front. And 4 years in front was elder brother Michael. Now, if you got away with the younger brother, elder brother thing, you think you got away with that, okay, I've got to tell you your problems are only just starting. Let me take you on. If we're going to look a bit further on, we need to look at your stars. Bear with me on this. Okay, think of your star sign. Can I just ask, are there any Leos in the room? Leos, do you want to put your hands up? In fact, Leos, do you want to stand up just so I can see who's... Let me have a look. Right, there are a smattering of Leos. By the way, if you're from a far-flung country, star signs are roughly, if you're born in August, you'll pretty much be a Leo. Fantastic, thank you. Can I just say how sorry I am? Would you all please just sit down? Are there any Librans in the room? Any Librans? Yeah, we're going to stand up. If you dare to stand up, you want to just stand? Look at you guys. I knew you guys would be here. I knew you'd be here. Life has been good for you. Okay, please take a seat. Okay, here's why. This guy is Roger Barnsley. He's a Canadian psychologist. He's an ice hockey fan. Now, I guess ice hockey in Canada is a bit like, I guess, pro football is here in America, and probably soccer is in anywhere else in the world. It's a passion sport. The major teams would do anything to get the best players. You would think that if you had the talent, you would always rise to the top. They would pick always the very, very best players. 4 years ago, Roger took his wife to the local game. His eyes were fixed on the match. Her eyes had drifted to the program. But it was the program that was about to reveal a dramatic discovery. Because she said to her husband, she said, do you know anything strange about the ages of these players? Roger took a look. Good mix of youth and experience. So what? She said, no, I'm not talking about how old they are. She said, I'm talking about the month that they were born. Roger took a look again. 24 players in the team, 17 were born between January and April. Just 3 were born between September and December. It's almost as if you were born in the second half of the year, you're somehow genetically incapable of hitting a small disc with a stick. What on earth was going on? When he got back to his office, Roger Barnsley did some research, and he pulled up the details of the entire Canadian League. And what he found was that 40% of the Canadian League were born in the first 3 months of the year. What was going on? What was going on was that the scouts select people once a year. And the cut-off time and cut-off age when they look at you is December the 31st. What that means quite simply is if you're born on January the 1st, you will be showing your skills against people who could be up to 12 months younger than you. The scouts weren't picking the best players. They were picking the oldest and the biggest. Now, you might be thinking, well, I don't play ice hockey. What's that got to do with me? Well, if you went to school, and I think you did, this has got everything to do with you. Look, if that can happen when you're 10 years old, imagine what happened when you were 5 years old and you first went to school. Now, in the Western Hemisphere, the cut-off date, I think, for most of us, is about 1st of September. If you were born after the 1st of September, if you were a Libran, you could be up to 12 months older than the poor Leo, who would be the youngest in the class. What does that mean? That means when you first went into your class, your teacher looked at you as a Libran and they picked you out. They picked you out because you seemed so much mature than the other children. Your understanding was so much greater. You knew about ABC, about 1, 2, 3 already. Christ, you've been on the planet 20% longer. But you were told how good you were, so you worked harder and the gap started to grow. When you hit the sports field, it was even worse. You were bigger, you were fitter, you were stronger, you were faster. And you were told how good you were told you had talent. So you joined clubs and societies, you worked harder at it, and the gap started to grow. That's what it means to you. Let me tell you what it means to me. I'm a younger brother. I'm a Leo. I've been the youngest in every class I've ever been in. I've got to say, I'm quite surprised to be here. But if I look back on my school life now, I can see it was just a matter of waiting for this age disadvantage thing to play itself out. In my first school, my primary school, I did nothing of note. In my secondary school, I did very little of note. The first set of exams I took at 15 weren't that great. It was the last set at 17 that I took that stunned my tutors. And they said, with results like this, Andrew, you really should have applied to Oxford or Cambridge. And the only way I could do that at this late stage was to take a year off and sit the entrance exam. So that's what I did. And when I went up to Cambridge a year later, I was now slightly older than most of the other people who were coming up. For the first time in my life, I turned age disadvantage into my advantage. And I thrived. I thrived academically. I even thrived at sports. I was ignored at sports for my entire school life, and suddenly I found myself fending off rowing crews who wanted me to row for them. Look, none of this matters to our sports starters today. They were set out on their road to success at the earliest age when their head was clear. But to you and me, who set out on our road after 20 years of random and false conditioning, how we see our place in the world can be everything. It can free us to seize every opportunity that comes our way. It can hold us back, certain that our place will always be somewhere in the pack. But what if we would put all that to one side? What if right now, here in this room, we looked at ourselves as Polgarsaurus, capable of anything, given the opportunity? And what if we realized that the opportunities before us is this BNI that we've all come here to celebrate? See, I stand before you as a testimony to someone that BNI can take you as far as your ambition can dream. But what I know is it doesn't matter whether you're looking after one nation or one chapter. It's your passion that makes the difference. I remember when I launched my first chapter about 15 years ago. A lady joined. Her business was cartoons and caricatures. They cost £35 a time. It was a very little business. And if I'm honest with you, it wasn't a very good business. But 6 months later, it had been transformed. 6 months later, she was working for all the major car companies, Benz, BMW, Mercedes. 6 months later, she was doing massive murals for local nightclubs. 6 months later, she was flown to Milan by a pharmaceutical company at £1,000 a day. I did that. I did that through the passion with which I did my business. And if you're running one chapter, one region, or one country, you can touch people's lives with what you're doing too. It's our passion that makes a difference. This man is John Britton. John was born with a passion for motorsport, and motorcycles in particular. Now, if you follow the motorcycling world, you'll know that it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. The works teams, the manufacturers teams spend millions and millions of dollars every year trying to shave a fraction of a second off a lap time, because fractions of a second are what wins races. Up against all of this, John Britton decided that he would build a racing bike in his garage next to his house. He took the design of a motor racing bike and he completely started from scratch. He threw out the chassis, which had been the foundation of every bike ever built. He decided he would bolt the suspension straight onto the engine to increase rigidity and cut down the weight. With revolutionary ideas like this, there was no place for standard parts. John, in his garage by his house, was manufacturing an engine and the parts to go with it for his bike. Now, if you and I did that, and we managed to put a bike together, I think we'd be quite happy if we made it to the shops and back. But John Britton's bike wasn't destined for the shops. John Britton's bike was destined for the track. And when it hit the track in 1991, the motorcycling world looked on in awe. For here was the fastest bike of its type in the world. John Britton was driven by his passion for what he did. I call this presentation The Short Road to Success, because I believe that when you're passionate about something, it drives you to take the shortest route. If you see a route to where you want to go, that's where you go. You take the shortest route. Very often, the longer routes look more attractive. And the less passionate you are, the more attractive they look. But they'll take you sideways, they'll take you this way, and they may not get you where you want to go. Passion leads you to take the shortest route. About 10 years ago, I came to this conference, and I've offered everybody in the room the chance to be in his next best-selling book. It was called Masters of Success. And I left the conference determined that I was going to be a contributing author to that book. The snag was, the remit was quite a tough one. What I was looking for was, he was looking for examples of people that had come through great difficulties in their life and risen up to great success. Who on earth could I pick? And when I got back to the UK, it was about 20 years after the Falklands War, and in every paper and every news item, this man was on there. This is Simon Weston, the man who stood next to a bomb that dropped out of an Argentinian plane. It went straight through his ship by his feet. He was almost melted in the process. And when he recovered after hundreds and hundreds of operations, he became a major fundraiser and a huge personality in the UK. I had my target. My question was, how do you meet and interview a big personality? I thought of all the things that I could do. I could ask all of my members if they had a contact 300 miles away in Cardiff that might be useful to get me to Simon Edwards. What else could I do? I could ring my parents who had contacts in Wales. They might be able to get me to Simon Weston. I could ring the director who ran the Welsh area and see if any of his members had a contact to get me to Simon Weston. Or I suppose I could just give him a call. It took me about half an hour on the net. I found a phone number. I picked it up and I rang it, and I found myself talking to Simon's sister. My passion for what I was doing poured down the phone line, and when I finished, I put the phone down and I held my breath. 7 o'clock that night, that phone rang again, and I found myself talking to Simon Weston. He was excited to to be talking to the author who was going to put him into a best-selling book. The short road to success. Let's just strip it down into some parts. First thing you need to do is to know exactly what you want. Can I just ask, anybody here set goals? Are we all goal setters? Yeah, we've got goals for how many chapters, every chapter size, all those various things. You've got goals for all that sort of thing? Yeah? Isn't it agony? Isn't it? Yeah? The trouble with goals is we're setting goals, things that aren't fully in our control. Sometimes if we hit them by chance, whoa, we celebrate. If we don't quite hit them, we quietly forget them. You know, I've got lots of chapters in the UK, 22 members, set the goal to be 45. 6 months later, 22 members. You might say it doesn't matter, setting the goal was the most important thing. But I know it does matter. Because if you ask me to reset a goal that I failed on, I'll invest a little bit less emotion in it the second time around. But I remember when I was first taught goals. When I was first taught goals, it wasn't about micromanaging. It was about, Andrew, what do you want? What's here in your heart? Because when you look in your heart, you find passion, and when you find passion, you're on your road to success. This is my daughter, Amara. She doesn't have goals. She has wants. And when you come up against an Amara want, it's like a tidal wave of emotion that's coming at you. All feeble, fatherly efforts in denial are just swatted aside as the next wave comes at you. Fathers in the room will know what I say and what I mean when I tell you that sometimes it feels easier to do what she wants so that she will leave you alone. But guess what? Successful entrepreneurs are just the same. They're driven by wants. You know, Ian Stowe's a very successful publisher in the UK. And he came across Richard Branson when he was launching his student magazine, his first magazine. And he described the experience like this. He said it felt easier to do what he wanted so that he would just leave you alone. Otherwise, he'd be back on your doorstep the next day, and the day after that. Look, if you don't have kids and you can't quite relate to that, let me give you something you will be able to relate to. Can I ask you just to think right back in time to when you were 14, 15, maybe 16 years of age. For the first time in your life, you fell in love. Was that a goal? Or was it a want? I think it was a want. It was an all-consuming, engulfing want and desire. Look, if the object of your desire was going to be somewhere, you engineered it so that you were there too. If the object of your desire was interested in a certain subject, suddenly you found that subject quite interesting yourself. You would change your look, you would change what you did, and along the way you were learning the most important lesson of all. Wanting is not enough. In life, you don't get what you want. You get what you do. You don't get what you want, you get what you do. Look, if you asked, you were in play, you were in the game. If you did nothing about it, you weren't even on the pitch. So when you've worked out what you want, the next thing you need to do is decide what you're going to do to get it. Decide what you're going to do to get it. Now, I think decisions are the most brilliant painkiller there is in business. Whenever I find myself in pain, whenever I find myself anxious and I feel a bit of anxiety, it's usually because there's a decision that needs to be taken that I haven't taken yet. When you know what you want, you need to decide exactly what you're going to do to get it. Let's take a look at a region. Let's take a look at Hong Kong. Hong Kong is a superb success story for BNI now. But it's worth thinking back just about 2.5 years ago when Hong Kong looked like most regions do when they first start. We had 10 chapters there. We had an average chapter size of 19. But one chapter took a decision. The largest chapter at that time wasn't 59 members. It wasn't 49. It wasn't 39. It was 29 members. And they took a decision. They were going to be the first platinum chapter in Hong Kong. I know it was a decision, not a goal, because some of the things that they did. The first thing they did was they set their platinum date. They set the date that they were going to be a platinum chapter. They set it and they shared it with their members every week. What that meant was, as the date approached, it wasn't like a goal that you could quietly drop. This was a decision that became a bigger and bigger burden. More effort was put into its achievement. They split the group into small parts so there was nowhere to hide. These groups had to meet outside of the meeting, and they ran through the Palms report to make sure their group was fully contributing to everything going on in the chapter. They took the entire chapter away for a power camp, and they're doing it every 6 months to focus on getting more business, more members into the chapter. With that kind of decision-taking, success is pretty assured. This is the result. They hit 50 with 3 weeks to spare. They ran straight through 50 and became a chapter of 60 members doing 180 referrals a week. Now, listen. Thank you for the businesses recorded in Hong Kong. And how much business are they doing? Let me tell you. Do you remember when you were young and you got your first calculator? You got your first calculator, this is what you did. You did 5 times 5 times 5 times 5, and the number got bigger and bigger and bigger. And in the end, when you've gone too far, you get that E on the left of the calculator. Do you remember that? Yeah? I pulled off a year's Palms report, summary Palms report, on BNI Connect for the energy chapter, and I got that E. That's how much business these people are doing. Its impact on the region, Stella, Stanley, and the team have taken it and they've put it into everything that they do, and Hong Kong now has an average chapter size of 37 members. It's a fantastic performance. Thank you. So when you decide what you want to do, you know what you want, you've decided what you're going to do to get it. If you want to be pain-free on your road to success, my advice to you is to be accountable for your decisions and not for the result. Be accountable for your decisions and not for the result. This is Diane Parr. This lady went into hospital in the UK for some pretty serious surgery. She went in and they prepared her and they took her into the operating theatre. They gave her that muscle relaxant that means you can't do anything, you can't even move your eyelids. And then they didn't give her the anesthetic that would mean she couldn't feel it. And she felt every cut, every slice, every nick, all the way through her operation. And when I heard that story, I thought, what can it be like to be lying there so helpless while these horrendous things are happening all around you and there's nothing that you can do about it? And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, you know what, I know exactly what that's like. And I bet you do too. Anyone launching a chapter? Yeah? Let me take you. January 1999, I'm driving to the Brighton chapter. 2 weeks ago, we had no guests. I'd used up my last what to do, we have no guest speech. I knew I had no guests this week, and I'm praying the members are going to come through. I'm standing there at the sign-in desk watching the members come through. 20 to 7, quarter to 7, 10 to 7, 5 to 7. They're looking at me with that, we're losing confidence in you, mate, look in their eye. I'm looking at them with that, where's the guest, look in my eye. Look, the solution was a simple one. This was the solution I made. I took a decision. The decision I took was that every week I would ring just 8 people that I didn't know. Because I found when I rang 8 people, I got 3 or 4 guests, I got 1 or 2 members. And my chapters just flew from that moment on. And look, if ever it had turned up that I rang 8 people fresh and none of them had turned up, I wouldn't have beaten myself up because I would have known next week normal service will be resumed. Pain-free run to success. Know what you want. Decide what you're going to do to get it. And hold yourself accountable for your decisions, not the result. Now, I wanted to share my vision of the world with you to show you that how we got to where we are today has not been a straight race. I think it's important because how we feel, our expectation, and our expectation in life can really hold you back. If ever you felt that your place is sitting in the pack, resting on average, I hope from what we've done today, you'll find the confidence to cast that to one side and realize your full potential in the years ahead. Because, you know, the truth is, there's never been a better time to be a BNI director. This is the largest gathering of directors that's ever been assembled. Sensational results that just a few years ago would have been unthinkable are now being produced by regions and nations on the four corners of the globe. With more resources than we've ever had before, there's a waterfall of support that's cascading down from the international office through national offices, through executive directors, assistant directors, flowing on into our chapters as we take 3+1 to success. We succeed when, as ordinary people, we seize the opportunities that are before us and pursue them with passion. If we can recognize that the icons of today are no different to you and me, they're just ordinary people leading extraordinary lives. If we can see ourselves as Polgar-saurus, capable of anything, given the opportunity and the passion to see it through. And if we can put to one side the lottery of chances that life has thrown up that got us to where we are today, then we are truly ready to succeed. When we come to look back on our lives in 10, 20, 30 years' time, we don't want to be saying, I could have been somebody. We want to be saying, by God, I was. This man is on top of a 14-story building in China. He's about to end his life. You know, China is moving forward at such a pace. There are no safety nets in China. If things go wrong, no one can save you but your family. This man had lost his business, he'd lost his family, his wife had left him, and now he's going to end his life. Now, this being China, almost immediately, a crowd gathered down below. The ambulance service came, they stopped, they got out, and they looked up to see what was going to happen next. The fire service came, they stopped the cars, they got out, they looked up to see what was going to happen next. 300 fit and able-bodied people stood and did nothing, even though the moment that man jumped, they would be left with an image that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. At the moment when the man climbed up onto the edge and prepared to take the final step of his life, one man came forward to try and save him. Li Xiaohui. Li Xiaohui pleaded with the man. He urged the man. He begged him. He nurtured him. And he turned his mind around. When the fire service finally got up to the 14th floor, the only man that man would talk to was that little beggar from the street below. They brought Li Xiaohui up, and the two men came down together. Ladies and gentlemen, cast aside all notion of any set place in the world for you. As you pour 3+1 into your chapters, break out of the ordinary and step up to an extraordinary life in the years ahead. That's it, I'm done. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.